What do you say we talk some Mizzou football? It's Tiger Week in St. Louis, in Missouri. The Missouri Tigers take on Alabama Saturday night at Faurot Field. Welcome into the Kilcoyne Conversation. Martin Kilcoyne with you. And this week, we're talking over with Howard Richards, former Missouri football player. I love getting into the resume. Talk about his resume all the time. Played football at Mizzou, St. Louis guy, public high league. Ends up being a first-round draft pick of the Dallas Cowboys. And after his football career, flipping through the paper in Dallas, sees a job, just a classified ad, to work for the CIA. Goes overseas for many years, stationed in Israel for a number of those years. So MIZ, NFL, CIA, love his resume. And we're going to talk about all of that. His take on Eli Drinkwitz, the new head coach. What does he know? What did he know? Who's the quarterback? What kind of year can we expect? But a little bit more digging into that career. Young kid from Mizzou. What was draft night like? This is before kids were in the green room. And then you're playing with Drew Pearson and Tony Dorsett, and Tom Landry is your coach. So fun conversation, not just about Mizzou football, but also about the Howard Richards experience, and maybe a little deep tease here, maybe even a book in the offing about the fascinating life that he has led. The Kilcoyne Conversation brought to you, as always, by our friends at Appliance Discounters. 5 area locations on the web, theappliancediscounters.com. And let's talk a little bit about GE, a quality name in the appliance world for so many years now. And when you want a good appliance, you're going to think about GE. And you want a great price, you're going to think about Appliance Discounters, whether it is a washer, a dryer, a refrigerator. I know for years, and it has been years now, Kilcoyne family has been heading to Appliance Discounters every time we need a new appliance. We've done it so many times. John's sick of seeing my text come in and say, hey, we're looking for this. We'll be over in a little bit. TheApplianceDiscounters.com is the website. If you want some GE merchandise, you know where to get it in the St. Louis area, TheApplianceDiscounters.com. Also, Triad Bank for a lot of businesses. It's the end of the fiscal year right now. Planning ahead to next year, an uncertain future. Make sure you're with the right bank. Triad Bank started in St. Louis in 2005, which means all the decision makers are right here in town. TriadBanking.com on the web or in person. It's in Frontenac on Clayton Road, just a block west of Lindbergh, real close to that Highway 40 and Lindbergh exit. Also, B&G Tuckpointing. BGTuckpointing.com is the website. Foundation repair, waterproofing, whatever it is, chimney, garage, your brick home, they will make it look new again. They are the best in the bricks. It's not just a slogan, it's a fact. Find out for yourself. BGTuckpointing.com. And also Marie DeVilla Senior Living, right there at the corner of Clayton and Weidman Road. MarieDeVilla.com. Take a virtual tour right now. Starting to think about your retirement years and a place to live. Well, it was good enough for Red Shandian. I'm telling you, it's good enough for you. And it's the atmosphere that makes it work. The people are great. The grounds, I call it the campus out there. MarieDeVilla.com for more information. Howard Richards right now. First up, the topic of Eli Drinkwitz.
I knew nothing of Eli Drinkwitz when Missouri hired him. I think it was as much of a surprise to me as it was to most people. Didn't follow at all Appalachian State. Hadn't really followed anything about their team until they played in the bowl game and realized they were 10-1 last year. But the biggest thing about Missouri's football search was that it was pretty controversial. Sort of all over the place. And Eli ended up being the last man standing. But from what I can tell thus far, from meeting him and having a few conversations with him and watching him on the field, the limited times that I've been able to see them, I've been impressed with the way he runs practice. His recruiting success has been very good, stockpiling for the future. Being able to scramble and assemble a pretty good class that joined the team for the 2020 season, and still building upon his early success for 2021. So I think his future is bright. obviously those players that he brings in, you've got to develop them. But I've been impressed with the staff that he's assembled. And, I think if you look at where he's been, how he's developed quarterbacks as both a quarterbacks coach and as a coordinator and a head coach, I think you have to look at it as a bright spot. And so I'm excited to see what he's going to do. He seems to have a pretty good idea and philosophy about what he's going to do. He's probably going to run a multiple offense. I'd say the best thing about what they're going to do offensively is that no one's really got great film on them. I mean, you could probably, let's just say if you're Alabama, Missouri's first opponent, you could certainly look at what was done at App State and get an idea, but Eli's too smart to allow that to be his blueprint. You certainly know that he's going to change it up significantly to keep people off balance. Heck, we don't even know who the starting quarterback's going to be at this point. So, there may be a little bit of Bill Belichick inside of Eli Drinkwitz, which wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing.
And I'm guessing Alabama's not too worried about it, but we are. Who do you think ends up at quarterback? And tell us what you do know. Sean Robinson obviously played a bit at TCU, so he's got a little bit of experience. And then Connor Bazelak, he's coming off injury, but he was a big-time recruit for Barry Odom at the time. What do you think of both candidates?
Well, let's start with Bazelak because he's the one that I've seen the most, from his time in relief last season. And was really off to a pretty good start in Missouri's last regular season game last year against Arkansas before he tore his ACL. But as you mentioned, big arm, highly recruited quarterback prospect, strong, smart kid, but raw, very young. And that's probably, the best thing that I can say about him is that he does have a big future, and you've got to put him in the quarterback mix as a possible starter this year. Sean Robinson, I think is an interesting prospect. He's a guy that can both run and throw the football. He's got experience as a starter when he was at TCU, and I think he brings a lot of that savvy and college experience to the table. He's probably a little bit rusty, having not played in some time. I think the best thing about Robinson is that he was declared ineligible last year. I'll say this: he didn't win his appeal to be eligible. 1 year, but he's got more to further develop, and if he wins the quarterback job, then you can count on his development as Missouri's starter. And I hope that bringing his skill set to the table, I think, is a benefit to the Tigers. So it'll be interesting to see. If I had to give an edge, I'd give the edge to Robinson on experience alone and what I've seen of him in a limited amount of time this season. So. But again, it's a guess. Anyone's guess. No one will know until probably just before kickoff on September 26th.
And they may hand the ball off a lot. That may not be a Drinkwitz, staple moving forward, but they may need to kind of get through this year. And Larry Roundtree is a guy who kind of quietly has put together a really good Mizzou career. How key can he be to, if nothing else, maybe just kind of eat some clock? And I'm not sure what to expect from this team, but I do feel good about Roundtree.
He's been very consistent throughout his career. He's a guy that, especially from a leadership standpoint, you want on your team. He's vocal. He's extremely loved by his team, but he gets it done on the field. And he's a guy that I think has a little bit to prove. He had a little bit of an off year last year, but being his last season here, I know that he wants to go out with a bang. And of course, Tyler Beatty gives them a nice 1-2 punch in the backfield. A guy that can run the football. He's got really good quickness and explosion, but catches the ball very well out of the backfield. So that's a positive. The thing offensively with Missouri is going to be that inexperienced offensive line. I mean, you're going to have conceivably could have 5 new starters this year. And with COVID, we don't know what's going to happen with this group. So naturally, suffice it to say, Missouri's offense success will certainly depend on how well this offensive line plays.
The best in the bricks. It's more than just a slogan. Why not make your home or garage or chimney look its best by fixing the bricks? That's what B&G Tuckpointing can do for you. Bricks look their best with proper tuck pointing. Call Rich Galati and his team at 314-363-0525. And by team, of course, we include his daughters Bella and Gabrielle. Or go online, bgtuckpointing.com. A proud St. Louis-based company that supports the hometown St. Louis Blues. Yes, they love their hockey. Chimney repair, foundation repair, caulking, waterproofing. They do it all. Have you driven around St. Louis? We have a lot of brick buildings, and if they need repair, you know who to call. Consider me among the many satisfied customers. Call 363-0525, 363-0525, or go online, bgtuckpointing.com, and find out what it means to be the best in the bricks. And playing Alabama in week 1 for Coach Drinkwitz, I mean, I don't know that you can get a worse debut game on the ledger. I guess it's at home, and there'll be some fans in the stands, but boy, they didn't do him any favors. You get the sense that he doesn't care. He's going to have fun with it, but what do you think happens? Now, I know you've rolled this out on KTRS, right? You got a nugget here, a coach's debut. I'll let you do it here.
42 years ago, September 10th, Missouri football's coming off a 4-7 season. They fired their coach, its coach, Al Onofrio. Brings in a guy from Washington State named Warren Powers, who opens the season against Notre Dame, the defending national champion. I happen to be the starter at right tackle, making my 5th start on the offensive line as a sophomore. But the thing that was interesting about that team, we had some players, and Kellen Winslow, Leo Lewis, Gary Ellis, Wendell Ray, and so on and so forth. We had no fear, and we went up to Notre Dame just like they were any other team. And 3 hours later, came away with a 3-0 victory. So I'd say, if you compare Notre Dame to Alabama, Notre Dame was coming off a national championship. Alabama did not, but they're always a perennial top 5 team. Missouri then had a worse record than this Missouri team the previous season at 4-7. This Missouri team was 6-6 last year, probably underachieved. So you just never know. This is why they play the games. And from my perspective, though, I think it's great that you're playing an opponent like Alabama. And, oh, by the way, in week 3, who do you have? The defending national champion LSU Tigers at LSU, one of the toughest places to play in college football. And in between that is Tennessee on the road. So you'll have a pretty good idea of what this Missouri team may be capable of in the first 3 weeks of the season.
And are you calling the upset here, Howard? You're just saying you never know.
I am saying you never know, Martin. I don't make predictions, as you know. I don't think it's the smartest thing to do, but I just think that, here it is. You're playing college football at a pretty high level. At some point, you've got to believe in coaches prepared you to need to step on the field on Saturday. And you really no fear and play your best and try to play mistake-free football. You're going to come away with a win. Probably no one gave us a chance to beat Notre Dame back in 1978 with a new head coach, but it happened. And there have been stranger things that have happened in college football. So that's really what I'm saying, is that expect the unexpected. And if Missouri plays well and Alabama makes some mistakes, who knows what the outcome could be.
And maybe the best player on the roster is a guy named Nick Bolton. Tell me about his year that you think he can have, and maybe even his potential at the next level?
Solid player. Very smart. To me, fearless. He covers a lot of ground. Has great football instincts. He's a hard hitter. A natural leader at the linebacker position. Maybe didn't get the props that he should have as in the preseason look by some of the prognosticators, but maybe he uses that to his advantage. I think this is a guy that certainly has a chance to be among the best linebackers in the country this season, certainly in the SEC. And I hope for his sake that he can get through injury-free and be able to play his absolute best, because he's a talented player and certainly has a future in the National Football League.
And for you, is this year 10 in the booth?
It is. Hard to believe. I mean, time flies. And we do have fun up there. We've got a great crew. I enjoy working with Mike and Scotty, Chris Trevino, and Matt Weingartner, our engineer. And we've been together for 10 years. And, it's just like my second family being with these guys, especially when we travel.
What's your level of excitement just to be able to do games, to see games? Probably even a month ago, we weren't sure. 2 months ago, we absolutely weren't sure. What's your level of excitement just to see the SEC pull this off?
I got to give credit to Greg Sankey and those on his support staff and others, the medical advisors that have gotten us to this point. Obviously, there's going to be, criticism for taking that next step. But I think, these people are smart enough to weigh whatever risks are there, and they believe enough that they think that they can get this season, at least get it started and hopefully get it finished. But I was probably as skeptical as anyone, thinking that, a couple months ago, man, this wasn't looking good at all. With the other teams deciding or other conferences deciding not to play. To get to this point, and I think delaying for 3 weeks was a very wise idea. You've gotten a chance to see how the NFL at least has done it, and so far so good. I'm happy to be where we are. I'm happy that not just for me to be able to do this, but I think, the fans, the people in this country need football at this point. They need something good to happen. And I think football at any level is probably a pretty good diversion, especially how 2020 has gone for not just the U.S., but for all over the world.
Oh, you mentioned your era at Mizzou, and Warren Powers comes in. You guys go to some bowl games. A lot of guys that made it to the NFL. James Wilder, another name in there. Phil Bradley, who was a great baseball player, part of that era. I want to go back when you were drafted, because if you look at the 81 draft, and I know you know all about the names, but LT, Lawrence Taylor, Kenny Easley, Ronnie Lott, but it wasn't the way we see it now, where you guys were all at the combine together. You were all hanging out the night of the draft. Like the night of the draft, you were sitting at home, right?
Sitting at my apartment in Columbia, one-bedroom apartment, watching the second year that the NFL draft was broadcast on TV by ESPN, with our assistant equipment manager at the time. He actually brought over a keg of beer at 9 o'clock and said, "Hey, I want to watch the draft with you." I said, "Okay." So it was just the two of us at first, and gradually people started showing up. And 3.5 hours later, my name was called. So there was no big production at all, the way you see it happening over in recent years. There's players be drafted in round one, going to New York and hanging out with the commissioner, and in their $2,000 or $3,000 suits. It was nothing like that. It was basic as you might imagine. I was watching on probably a 19-inch black and white TV, and it was about as raw as you can get.
Who called you? Was it Tex Schramm, Gil Brandt, Tom Landry? We're talking legends in the game of football. Who actually called you?
Gil Brandt. Gil Brandt made the call just after, probably within 5 minutes of Commissioner Pete Rozelle making the call. I don't know. I think I have Did I ever show you the video of my name being announced by Roselle? If not, I'll have to send you the video because it's pretty fun. And then the reaction afterwards. Yeah.
Well, and you get picked by a legendary franchise. Were you, I mean, a kid in St. Louis, you knew about the Cowboys, obviously. Were you in awe when you first went down there and you see Tom Landry and the fedora? And, I mean, Tony Dorsett's on that team, right? Drew Pearson, Randy White. I mean, some studs.
Harvey Martin, Ed Jones, you name it.
Were you at all when you first showed up there?
I'd be lying if I said I was not. Of course I was. These are my ultimate teammates were guys that I grew up watching, being a big Red fan that hated the Dallas Cowboys. And all of a sudden on April 28th, 1981, that all changes because I'm now part of that team. But I was welcomed with open arms by everyone on the team, and it was actually an even better experience than I imagined because it was such a welcoming environment, and all those teammates that we just talked about, no real crazy personalities. They were just regular people, great teammates. And I thoroughly enjoyed my time there, and it was a pleasure learning from those guys also. But just being a part of that team with a couple Hall of Famers on that group, and one more that probably should be in the Hall of Fame as well. But it was a fun time for me.
Who's that? Who's the one?
Drew Pearson. I think he didn't get in last year, but I think his name has come up again for the next class as a legend.
What was Landry more like a CEO? Did he kind of just run the show but didn't interact a whole lot?
He was involved. Not as much as you see some head coaches involved today. I mean, I can tell you this: his appearance on the sideline, as you saw it, he was very much like that. He wasn't very stoic, but trust me, he was very involved. Offensively, especially, even though Landry was forever known as a defensive coach. The Dallas Cowboys were his team through and through. There was not a piece of that team that he didn't touch or have input in every area, be it offense, defense, or special teams. But he made it clear that he was definitely the boss. You never saw the rah-rah stuff that you see with head coaches and players now, chest bumping, high-fiving. That was never Tom Landry. But that, to me, was old school football. You mentioned the 80s. That's the way it was back then. So there was an intimidation factor, but, I really got to know him a lot better later on when I started shuttling in plays. It forced me to learn the offense a lot more quickly. But he trusted me because he knew that I was giving it a great effort to learn and be versatile. There were times when I played 3 different positions in a football game. So I truly had to know as much about that offense as possible. And, I'm pretty proud, even though I had some injuries and didn't play as long as I wanted to, I'm still proud of what I was able to accomplish on that team.
You love sports? Sure. But what you really love is a winning team and a great story. That's exactly what you get with Appliance Discounters. It started with just 3 employees. 1 location, 3 employees. Denise Bradley, her husband John, her brother Tony. That's it. More than a decade ago. And for years, you've heard me talking about them. Here's why. My dishwasher, it's a Bosch, the quietest dishwasher on the market. Remember Grandma's dishwasher always... That's not what's going on with us. We got it at Appliance Discounters. Our washer, our dryer, our stove, and our refrigerator, and Electrolux. Yes, the Kilcoins put these babies to the test. During the quarantine, the MVP at our house, the dishwasher, it got a workout. We've got big name brands we're talking about at a great price. St. Charles, Baldwin, Maplewood, South County, and in the city. The best bet, just get online. TheApplianceDiscounters.com. Our savings are your savings. The fountains and flags outside invite you in. Once inside, it's obvious what makes Marita Villa so special. It's the people that live there. and the people that work there. I know for a fact it's a fun place to visit, been there many times over the years for special events, and you can tell the residents love it as well. Welcoming atmosphere, providing all types of senior living, independent living, skilled nursing, memory care. Marie de Villa Senior Living, that's what we're talking about. A single location. That means ownership is hands-on. The residents here are considered guests, and trust me, they feel that way. The beautiful grounds make it more of a campus-type atmosphere. I love calling it the Marie de Villa campus, located at the corner of Clayton and Weidman Road. I guarantee you've driven by there, probably seen the fountains going. Red for October baseball, blue when the Blues are deep into a playoff run. It's a family-owned facility. It's been in business since 1960, and for so many years, it was home to the Cardinals legend, Red Schoendienst. I encourage you to take a virtual tour or simply to read more about this special place. Go to mariedevilla.com. Was it ever hard as an old lineman? I forget what we even call it, like the up-down move right before the snap. What
the shift.
The shift, yeah. When did they start that? I guess when did they stop that? And what was that all about?
I can tell you when we stopped it. We stopped it in, I believe, during the 86 season. I think it may have been 85, but we stopped doing the shift then. The reason for the shift, and it didn't have a fancy name, some people called it the Dallas, was when we 1, 2, 3 up motion. It was used to shield the defense, the offensive movement, the motions, the shifts from the defense, just that few second or so to obscure it from the defense, to keep them off balance. So we use a lot of quick counts unless you had to audible. And that's what Landry felt kept teams off balance. And to a great extent, it really did do that, because you could hear teams trying to adjust defensively, making calls. And we had tall offensive linemen. So just that time where we'd go up and the backfield would move, it would kind of shield what we were trying to do offensively. So that little bit of pause made a difference more times than not.
When you had your first game at the Old Busch Stadium, I'm guessing, and you probably had a welcome to the NFL moment before that. You're drafted, your buddies see it on TV. That's cool. But what about that first game for you, being at Busch, playing against the Big Red team, the team you grew up watching?
Surreal. Watched a lot of football games as a high school kid, of course, even in grade school, watching the Big Red, and my heroes, of course, my uncle, Ernie McMillan, playing on that field, and, some great Cardinal baseball, of course, in the Old Busch Stadium. Then to walk through the doors and through the tunnels and to be in that locker room was it was awesome for me. I couldn't believe that I was in that spot. And then actually play a game on that field was, something that you could only dream about. But it happened. It was real. And thoroughly enjoyed coming back to play St. Louis when I was with the Cowboys. Unfortunately, in '84, I had my first major knee injury on the same field. So, how ironic to come home and play in front of all your family and friends and to get hurt with an injury that by most standards should have ended my career, and was actually told I should retire after that. But of course, when someone tells you at this level that you can't do something, I fought through it and was able to come back and even earn a starting position and play 3 more years.
Wouldn't that feel like just effing concrete?
It
was it worse than others?
It wasn't the worst. As you know, that was a multi-purpose field. Yeah, the vet in Philly was probably the worst. I don't know how old the pad was underneath the carpet, but, there's a layer of asphalt, and at least on the old stadiums, and there's a thick pad, cushy pad, and then you've got your layer of artificial surfaces, whether it's astroturf or tartan or whatever it was. But that pad, I bet you at the vet was, went from here to probably nothing. It was like there was just carpet on concrete, and it was really, really, really hard. And of course, those baseball stadiums like Pittsburgh, Philly, Cincinnati, St. Louis, there was no crown on the field. The field was flat. So when you grow up playing on a typical football field, there's usually a crown. It affects how you do everything. It affects really a lot of the plays that you run offensively, because typically, you get speedy backs and you're running outside, you're running downhill, so your backs get some downhill momentum. And if you don't believe that, go back and look at the Oklahoma Sooners under Barry Switzer. Probably a field that had the highest crown. It was so high sometimes from sideline to sideline, you could almost see the waist of players. But I think it gave – I'm exaggerating a little bit. But I think it gave their backs a big, big advantage because they were running downhill so much.
I love the resume, MIZ, NFL, CIA. If I told the kid at Southwest High, hey, you're going to end up being a first-round pick out of Mizzou, you're going to play for the Dallas freaking Cowboys, then you're going to work for the CIA. I mean, there's no way a young Howard Richards believes that.
Not at all. I had no map for my future per se. I mean, I never, of course, I wanted to play pro baseball. I wanted to be 45 or number 20 for the baseball Cardinals, speaking of Bob Gibson and Lou Brock, my heroes. And I didn't really start getting serious about the sport of football until high school, when my development in that sport was much better than it was in baseball. And only played 1 year of baseball, hitter. And I thought, something about this isn't right. I'm doing my best, throwing a no-hitter and get pulled after, 3 innings. It makes no sense, or 5 innings. So I quit baseball to focus on basketball and football. And I started learning the sport, started growing into my body. And, ultimately it was a natural for me. And I love the game. I love learning about it. I loved improving and trying to excel and be the best that I could be. But beyond that stuff, had no desire. Well, I never ever thought that I would work in civil service at all, let alone work for the CIA. But it was really a fluke. The story, how it happened, just from responding to a newspaper ad, and the rest is history. But the moral of all that is being in a situation where you're prepared for anything, for your future, whether it's doing your best at school, and really my educational background has as much to do with me landing there as anything. Going back and getting that degree from the University of Missouri, being a liberal arts student, which enables you to do so many different things professionally that work to my advantage. And they, when I joined the agency, or just before I joined, that was one of the things that they pointed out. They said that, what you've accomplished in school, your educational background, makes you a valuable asset to us, because we can plug you in virtually any position in this organization, and we can teach you to excel, and the rest is up to you.
The one thing I've always wondered, because of your size, you can't blend in, right? I mean, I always think of the CIA as like under the table, hiding in the back of the trunk, like that. Maybe I've watched too many freaking movies, but could you blend in and be? I always wondered about that, because you're a big guy. You're going to stand out.
You stand out physically. However, people are placed in different situations under the guise of something else. So cover stories work very, very well. I'll just leave it at that. But I was able to do my job without, any problems at all, regardless of how I looked or how big I was. So the agency does a very, very good job of putting people in situations to be successful.
Do you read, Tom Clancy and say, oh, that's not accurate? Do you watch Jason Bourne films and say, oh, they're way off? I mean, is any of it, we all are fascinated by it, the Homeland series. Do you think anybody gets it right, or do you avoid it?
I don't watch much of it at all. No, but I will say this, and our buddy Bill McDermott, if he's watching, will attest to this. He started watching Homeland, got addicted on it, and he asked me the same question once. I said, For my money, Homeland probably does it best. Probably is the closest thing to reality that I've seen on television. So even with that in mind, there's so much more beyond what what you'll never see or experience, just from a TV show. But there are a lot of parallels from things that I experienced and witnessed while I was employed there.
Was it always a thrill? Were you always, I mean, not that you're always in danger. Again, I've watched all these movies. I feel like you're always in a car chase shootout, which I know that's not everyday life, but was it?
It's not. Are you sure?
Maybe it was. I don't know. Was it exhilarating? And you were in the Middle East. I mean, you were over there in that area. Was it harrowing? Would you sleep well at night, or were you always jumpy?
I can tell you, living in Israel as I did for 2.5 years, you learn to be alert all the time. People in our country here aren't nearly as aware and alert as those Israeli citizens. For instance, we all know that there are a lot of suicide bombs, or have been in the past. If there's ever a package left on a sidewalk or street corner, any Israeli is trained to report it immediately and to get far away from that thing, because you never know if is like a public transportation effort, because a lot of suicide bombers used public education, used public transportation as a means to affect as many casualties as possible. So there are things that you learn. There's some unfortunate situations, but you have to live sort of in a constant state of vigilance and awareness. Just after I left Israel, I learned of a suicide attack on a bar that was right next door to the embassy in Tel Aviv. And it was a place where we would sometimes go to kind of wait out traffic. I lived north of the embassy, and typically it could take, what should have taken 10 to 12 minutes to drive home could sometimes take 45 minutes. So we'd sit there as one of the places where we'd kind of wait out traffic, and, have a beer, have a cocktail. But I later found out that that place was hit by a suicide bomber. In fact, one of the waitresses that used to wait on us was killed in that attack. So fortunate to have been there and not been directly affected by anything like that, especially because my daughter grew up there. I mean, we went when she was 7 months old. And, so there were some hairy times, especially being there during 9/11. There was a very serious thought that the city of Tel Aviv, the whole country of Israel might be hit also right after that. And, we're scrambling. I couldn't find my daughter and the nanny at first, but later located them. And most of the residences in Israel have some sort of bomb shelter because of the nature of what could happen. So I made sure that they were, at home and in that bomb shelter until I could notify them that everything was safe. So it's a hairy time. There are scary times. I've been on a couple of assignments in the middle of the night with bullets flying, and you're often under surveillance. Not just people from say the host country, but there are people that have infiltrated the country from other countries too, that are trying to figure out what it is that you're doing and trying to get a bead on your activities. So yeah, living in a constant state of awareness and vigilance can take its toll on you. So I was glad to get in and get out virtually unscathed. But it was a tremendous experience to be and live and work in that sort of a high energy, dangerous at times situation, especially with the time that I spent also in the West Bank and Gaza City, working with the Palestinians.
All right, the last one, and Howard's got thinking, I got shit to do. I didn't know this was going to take this long, but this is the last one. could you ever write a book about your life? Because I do think it's fascinating. Kid from St. Louis, Mizzou, NFL, Cowboys, CIA. And if you did, when you leave the CIA, is there a non-disclosure? Is there just an understanding? How much could you, if you did, first of all, would you write a book? But then if you did, can you include any of that?
How ironic you asked that question, Martin, because I am about a year and 3 or 4 months into writing that book.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. I swear to God, I did not know that. Perfect.
After much prodding and poking and encouragement from a lot of my friends, I finally found a colleague who I've known for years when I met in Dallas, but he's also a Mizzou journalism school graduate who worked on the sort of an executive producer on the Dallas Cowboys weekly TV show, which spun off from the weekly magazine that they used to put out. He volunteered to do it, and he's interviewed, probably between 50 and 60 people. And to include at least one former CIA director, number of other colleagues, and people that. So it's not going to be CIA focused. It's going to focus on pretty much every aspect of how I grew up here in St. Louis and beyond. And to answer your other question, yes, there is a process. Anytime you write anything about the agency, publications review board. So there's a process to submit the manuscript and get it vetted. It's for the protection, in simple terms, for the protection of two entities, for the writer and also for the agency. You don't ever want to disclose anything unauthorized. So it's to keep you, the individual, the writer, out of trouble, and also to protect the agency's secrets.
When's it coming out? When's it drop, as the kids say?
That I don't know.
That's classified. You're telling me that's classified now? Okay.
I'm telling you, it's not classified, but I honestly don't know. There's still, I'd say the prologue's been written, the first chapter has been written, and so we're moving along. So, and I haven't, honestly, I've still got to review it all too. So it's a long process. I'd say, this is September, certainly not before the end of this year, but maybe sometime in 2021. I don't want to do anything in 2020. This year's a wash.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. Howard, just a great guy, and really a second act for him. Well, I guess it'd be like his third or fourth act. But the chance to come back to his alma mater and be on the play-by-play, in the booth, not doing the play-by-play, but alongside Mike Kelly, just being part of the broadcast team now in his 10th year. You can hear him in St. Louis on KTRS or the Missouri Tigers Radio Network. Fun to catch up with Howard. Thanks to you for checking it out. We appreciate you supporting the Kilcoyne Conversation. Make sure you're subscribed. That way on Google or iTunes or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. When we do a segment, it's delivered directly to you. We're having a lot of fun with these conversations, and we appreciate our great sponsors. Make sure you support them. Marie de Villa, Senior Living, Triad Bank, Appliance Discounters, and, of course, the fine folks at B&G Tuckpointing. We'll talk to you again soon.